just finished Ghost of Tsushima. Yes, this game is old, but hear me out. I got this and I added it to a pile of games that I knew I would play later so that I could focus on the pile of games that I was ignoring. I've said it before, my people over 25, adulting. It sucks. Gets in the way of a lot of stuff. But anyway, I finally got it, put 44 hours into it, finished everything. And I really want to talk about it because I am very surprised at how much I enjoyed this game. And not necessarily the gameplay. I mean, that wasn't really surprising. Sucker Punch doesn't really miss. It is the studio that came out with one of my top 5 games of all time in Infamous, the first one. But it's really the story. So let me put it this way. I've not been shy about saying Mass Effect 2 is my favorite video game of all time without compare. Just the world or universe rather, that it brought you into, all the lore it told you, the ever-present threat of these Reapers that are coming to destroy you stays in the back of your head. You have a Commander Shepard that you have at least some part in molding, all these characters that you can choose to get close with and throughout your playtime with all the different crew members you meet. I've never been as immersed in a game as that. And, the fact that the narrative was so good, it drew me into the world. And I didn't think a story would really draw me in that much ever again until I played this, which isn't even an RPG. So it's very surprising. Now, gameplay wise, an overall game, Mass Effect 2 still is better. But this narrative, it really does compare. And its main character, Jin Sakai, he might be my new favorite video game protagonist ever. And I'm going to explain why. Okay, so this game is clearly goated, and I'm sure there has been a lot said since it's released. In fact, a quick Google search shows me it was very positively reviewed. Not to be unexpected. So, I'm going to talk about the story the most because the narrative and Jin Sakai in particular are really what are ingrained in my brain. But kind of like I do with movies, I'm not going to obviously talk about 40 hours worth of story. I'm going to pick out specific story moments that just really stood with me, just to demonstrate where I'm coming from and why I think this game and Jin in particular are just so well done on the narrative front. So with that, obviously there are going to be spoilers here in both what I say and what you see. So if you have not played this game, then pause this video and come back after you do. Or if you don't care, then go ahead and stick with me. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the gameplay at all, so I will talk about that, because even though the story is really what I think is the best part of this game, it actually is very, very fun to play through as well. So I'm going to talk about the gameplay a little bit, and then we'll get into the story. And because I know me and I tend to ramble on, I'm going to add timestamps to this one so you can go straight to my thoughts on the story element if you want to. Okay, so for those who don't know, just very super base level explanation of what's going on here. You play as a character named Jin Sakai. You are the nephew to the Jito, or think of him kind of as the ruler of the island of Tsushima. Tsushima being one of the islands of Japan, and this game takes place during the Mongol invasion of Japan, little less than 1,000 years ago. Anyway, after a staggering defeat to begin the game, your uncle is kidnapped, and then you make it your mission to both rescue him, expel the Mongol invaders, and kill Kotal Khan, a descendant of Genghis Khan, who was leading this entire campaign against your people in Tsushima. So, save your uncle, kill the Mongols. That's the name of the game, okay? Now, we're going to start with my sours about this game, and then we'll end sweet. And I really only have 3 negatives, and honestly, only one of them is probably valid, with the other 2 being nitpicks, but hey, it is what it is. So first, we have an empty open world here. This game is gorgeous, and as you traverse this beautiful land, you do see just that, the land. Outside of camps and villages and farms, the world is pretty much empty. Now, the game gives a very good reason in that there's a full-on invasion happening, right? So roads may not be the safest for people, but you also don't see that many of the Mongol invaders on the road outside of, main missions that you play. So really, you're kind of just traversing and exploring in solitude in a very quiet land. Now, this is definitely more of a nitpick, because let's say the roads were full of Mongols and I couldn't move like 10 feet without facing an encounter, like this was Pokemon Red or something. I'd be way more annoyed than I am currently playing the game. I guess it's just I wish games would embrace a happy medium like The Witcher 3, where I very much felt like I was dropped in a world that existed long before I turned on my PlayStation or PC. I played Witcher on PC. But basically, when I'm in that world, I feel like it's very lived in. So, just something I noticed with Ghost of Tsushima. So, my second negative is also a nitpick, and it's a story thing. So, you have to kind of ignore this little piece because the rest of the narrative is fantastic. But at the very beginning of this game, you're on a beach fighting the Mongols, and you just lose. Like, it's not like you were snuck, or you were, were caught unsuspecting, or there was a surprise attack on your home. No, you charged them, they were in your face. You had your gear and your sword, and you just lost the fight. So, after that opening battle, you basically lose your gear, and then you have to go retrieve it. And the game makes a big deal of showing you get your sword back as if the first time you've touched it ever. Even though you just had it on the beach. And then all of a sudden you are a certified G, an untouchable killing machine just chopping down Mongols left to right. Like, how did that happen? Where was it on the beach at the beginning of the game? Like, it's a weird thing, and like I said, I know I'm nitpicking, and it's probably because I played this in such a condensed amount of time, so I remember things like that at the beginning, but it was just weird to me that you kind of sucked on the beach at the beginning, but then you're just all of a sudden an amazing samurai. Okay, so then the last thing, and this one actually is valid, it's about the AI in the game. The AI is dumb. Like, really dumb. So enemies are pretty basic in their attacks. So once you meet them, you quickly understand how each type of enemy will move. And like, look at this on your screen right now. I mean, come on. How are they not seeing me? Like, how are they not seeing these assassinations? Like, what? Now, don't get me wrong. It's very, very fun to fight. It never once got old for me. But I tend to play games on a difficulty above normal and then dial it back if I find it's more a chore than fun. Something like a Jedi Fallen Order. But in this game, I really didn't have to do that because normal swarms of enemies are kind of like fodder. To the point where, honestly, I think I might have died less than 5 times in the 30 plus hours I spent on the mainland. Now, the one caveat to all of this is if you get the director's cut or if you download the DLC, that complaint really goes away once you reach the second island that's unlocked in the DLC called Icky Island. The developers must have, realized that they made the game a little too easy for us because those complaints don't exist on Icky Island. That expansion, the enemy types are smarter, harder, more diverse, and, it's very much more of a challenge, but it's still fun. Okay, so yeah, that's it for the negatives. Like I said, I didn't have that much. Now I'm going to get into the positive gameplay elements. And there's a lot to like in this game, but I'm really going to try to just narrow it down to the things that really made, the top of my list. First, I didn't experience one crash, which I know I really shouldn't praise a game for working like it's supposed to, but come on, this game is enormous. And not one glitch or even a texture pop in that I noticed, or definitely no freezes or anything. I think that has to be commended because, I still remember games, and there are still games that exist today where that's not the case, especially games this big. The graphics, they are a spectacle. Not just the environments, character models and combat, just beautiful. The sight of someone's limbs falling off and the way you look after rolling around in the dirt, or even during Kurosawa mode where you can switch it to black and white and make it look like a Kurosawa movie. All these things, I just want Sucker Punch to know how much they're appreciated. I noticed these details. You could have gotten away with making a fun hack and slash game that, kind of looked basic and gotten credit, but you went above and beyond. Especially, like I said, when you fight, you look like you've gone through a brawl every time. When it's raining, there's going to be mud on you as you roll around and dodge.
There's gonna be blood on you as you cut off limbs. It's very fun. Now, speaking of combat, it's incredibly satisfying and the controls are A1. I never once felt like Jin did something I did not want him to do. And I also love how many different tools the game gives you to dispose of your enemy. You can tailor yourself. You can be a silent killer and assassinate people, or you can be a pompous loudmouth, like I was. This game has a standoff, like a feature, or I guess we'll call it a feature, called standoff, where you can basically walk up to a whole fort or a whole group of enemies and just say,
"Show me your skill."
Like, I love that feeling of just walking up and thinking, yo, these fools cannot handle me. I did a standoff every single time I had the option, unless it was a stealth mission. Now, speaking of, I usually hate stealth missions in games that aren't stealth games, but in this case, they were few and far in between, and they were also incredibly forgiving if you did make a mistake, so I give them kudos for that. Duels! I really love the duels. There are one-on-one fights that you have in this game at certain points, and it was a very nice change up from the usual combat. You're really just a swordsman in these duels. You don't have all the different weapons and tools that you normally have, and the different opponents that you fight in these duels force you to change up your style. So that was a nice little challenge that they throw into the games, and I really appreciate that. You really felt like you were in the shoes of a samurai during those moments. So then the other thing I'm going to point out, and this is probably going to be the last thing, because again, there's a lot, but I really want to talk about the final boss. So many games, so many, make your final opponent needlessly and impossibly strong. Looking at you, Uncharted 2. Now, the King Koopa is obviously going to be different than regular Koopas, right? But there is no reason that a regular man or a regular monster or a variant of something that you fought 1,000 times throughout a game should somehow be so much harder than everything else you fought in that game. In this game, the final boss is a man, a regular man. I killed 100 men during this game, so I'm glad that they made him a regular man in the final boss fight. Granted, he had a lot more resources, but he was still just a man. Like, he wasn't out here teleporting across the stage or having possibly high stamina or require like TNT just to take his health down a little bit. He was a man who was vulnerable to a sword, and I really, really loved that. Okay, so I definitely did not touch on everything, and there's probably some gameplay element that I missed, but hit me up on IG or YouTube if you want to talk about that. But I really want to get into the story and why I loved it so much. Okay, so actually, as an aside, this video is actually longer at this point than I thought it would be. Now, I was going to focus on all the side characters and how they connect with Jin and how they impact him, but I think that'll make this video too long, so I'm going to try to focus on a few characters that basically show, you know, his reluctance to become the Ghost, what happens when, you know, people start acknowledging him as the Ghost, when he accepts the role, and then, you know, ultimate consequences, and the story interwoven between all of that.
I'm sorry, Shino.
The Kappa killed him.
Not Kappa. Thieves.
No. Only a demon could do such a thing.
Desperation can bring out the demon in the best of men. Is there somewhere you can go?
Okay, so that scene I just played, it featured a character that I don't remember from a side quest that I also did not remember until I was putting this video together and I saw it on my hard drive. But I included it just to show how much care goes into storytelling here. Like, that was just a an optional side quest, and look how much pathos and emotion was in it, right? So it's not just the narrative, it's the cutscenes and the art direction of them, obviously the graphics, the voice acting, both English and Japanese, which I did switch between, and the evolution of the world as you progress. Like, it just all comes together to craft a masterful tale. Okay, so let's get to the first story beat that I want to talk about, and that involves the character that you meet at the beginning of the game and her impact on you. So right after the opening scene at the beginning, you meet your very first ally. Her name is Yuna. She's the one who actually saves you from the beach, right? Now, she has selfish reasons for saving you. She wants you to help her liberate her brother. But, you know, she has a good heart. And you both do have the same goal. You want the Mongols gone. You want your people safe. It's just the way you approach them are different. Yuna is a thief. And she uses trickery and assassination to get, you know, her to do what she needs to do. Jin is a samurai, and those are not things that he is used to. You know, he is the prototypical samurai raised by his uncle, right? So you never resort to assassination or poisoning. You always face your opponent with honor. You know, you call them out and challenge them to a duel. You never stab anybody in the back, like things like that. So, you know, at first when he meets Yuna, it's kind of like oil and water. They don't really get along that well. But it's very quickly that Jin realizes, you know, these Mongols aren't the normal type of enemy. So maybe what he's always been learning isn't the best way to go about dealing with them. And that leads to, you know, like pretty much the foundation of what is so good about this story. Jin has this internal struggle in himself where he wants to save his people, and he starts to think, you know, by any means necessary. But, you know, what his uncle taught him, what he firmly believes, and what other people in the world say to him are contradicting that, because, you know, he is still a samurai, and there is a samurai way of doing things.
Before the samurai, this island was ruled by criminals. We changed that by creating order and delivering justice in the open. We live by a code of honor, and sometimes we die by it.
You know, it really might just be the voice acting. It might just be that good. Then that's what drew me into this story so much. I mean, obviously our guy's going to go through an arc, but these cutscenes, every time I watch them, are just, chef's kiss. Now, I love that the game took this direction, because it'd be very easy to just be like, hey, you know, you killed my uncle, or you killed my people, kidnapped my uncle, I'm just going to become a murderer and go on a rampage. But no, Jin doesn't just change who he fundamentally is on a dime. It is a progression, a slow progression, where he starts to make, you know, minimal compromises.
Sakai, the way you fight, it's not your uncle's way, and it's not mine.
We've never faced an enemy like this. I do what I must to defeat them.
A samurai is a guardian, not a killer who darts around like a thief.
You didn't see Komodo.
I've seen enough.
Now, despite the fact that you've, you know, decided to make compromises, Jin still has this notion in his head for a large portion of this game that he can always just go back, right? Like, yeah, now I'm going to, you know, use assassination. Yeah, I'll slaughter people and make them afraid of me. Even when Yuna starts, you know, she's the one who spreads this rumor about you being called the Ghost of Vengeance, the Ghost of Tsushima's Vengeance, who's here to expel the Mongols. And she's saying, hey, we can use this to inspire people and scare the Mongols. You're like, yeah, I don't even want that. I'm just here to, you know, save my uncle. And once we free him, we're going to follow his lead and fight these people as samurai. So I personally love that. You see, Jin right now at this point thinks that he is a bad, like what he's doing is wrong. He thinks of himself as a bad person. He thinks of himself as someone that, you know, his uncle would be ashamed of, and he doesn't want that. He sees himself in the wrong and is hoping that by the end he can be in the right again. So let's just remember that, you know, like I said, for a large portion of this game, Jin actually sees himself as being a villain. Now, in traditional fashion for me, I am going to jump back a little bit, because there is a bit of a game mechanic that I didn't mention that I do want to talk about, and it has to do with your reputation, though I guess this does feed into your narrative as well. But, so like I said, at the beginning of the game, you know, you're on the beach, you lose, and you are what's known in the game as like a broken samurai. That is your current rank. And as you accomplish missions and you defeat Mongols and you liberate more of the island, your rank or reputation starts to grow. Your legend grows. And people know you, you know, as this avenging ghost. That's how you get this moniker, the Ghost of Tsushima. So you start at the bottom as this broken samurai, and you work your way all the way up to becoming the Ghost of Tsushima, right? The avenging spirit. It's pretty cool. So as your reputation grows, right, people start to notice you, and it's a great way to draw you in, because as you walk around, you hear side conversations about you, ranging from people just talking about your skill.
Getting worse.
Must be that samurai. He's got Mongols chasing him all over the prefecture.
I hope he kills the bastards.
To people really out here talking about you like you're the Batman.
Charge. No, I mean the ghost is Lord Shimura. They're the same person. What? Lord Shimura knows he can't break samurai laws, so he secretly fights as the ghost in order to win. But in public, he gets to pretend he's a proper samurai.
And the thing that really gets me with it is not just, the game mechanic. Like, yeah, it's cool to know that, like, I'm making a difference and that people are noticing me, but narratively, as your reputation grows and you become more of this ghost, you see Jin in the story change along with it. And it's not just him. As his legend grows, you see it affect those people that, the allies that you've come to bond with, honestly. So let's talk about Ryuzo, your best friend from childhood. And the people who've played this game know where I'm going with this. So he's a fellow swordsman like you, though he was never made samurai, and he leads a group of ronin known as the Straw Hats. And they're suffering along with everyone else, and they want the Mongols gone. But Ryuzo, his men, they're literally starving to death, and he wants to help his people as much as you want to help the island. And in your mind, you're like, okay, we have a common enemy, let's go ahead and get rid of them, right? Now, as this legend of the ghost grows, remember, Jin, he doesn't even call himself that. He doesn't want it, but other people recognize it, and Ryuzo recognizes this too. And in his mind, it's almost like he's seeing you, and he's like, hey, you're this ghost doing what you need to do for your people. I should be able to do what I need to do for my people. And that leads to, again, another great arc from this story, where this guy who's your best friend just ultimately ends up basically betraying you because he thinks it's in the best interest of his people. And that leads to a duel with some of the best dialogue. Now, this fight is excellent to me, not just because it's fun and gorgeous and has great background music, but as the two friends fight while clashing swords, it feels as if this is the first time the ghost actually has had an impact on you. Ryuzo even calls you Ghost for the first time during this fight. So yeah, it's like the ghost, this moniker you don't want, has now actually impacted you and one of your most treasured relationships. Now, Ryuzo being your best friend and not only betraying you but your whole country, that should make him pretty easy to hate. But he's not. I don't hate him that much. And again, it's a testament to how he's written and how they show his turn, because you go through several missions where you see kind of his point of view. Even though, again, you don't ultimately agree with it because he's siding with a genocidal maniac. But at the same time, while I'm against him, I can actually understand him. And yeah, when you're ultimately reunited again and you find him for the last time, the end of your friendship, which is, the end of him, it's actually pretty heartbreaking. So yeah, I guess you can consider him, the first, real true casualty of the ghost. Now, another person, and the next person I want to talk about that I think people would find easy to hate, is Uncle. And again, I disagree there, because although I ultimately think that, he's kind of being a puss, I'm not that mad at his reaction to things, and I'll tell you why.
What's that ahead?
They hunt people for sport.
Not sport.
practice, they're ruthless.
So while Jin is, outside in the world, fighting the Mongols and trying to free his uncle is trapped in jail by the Khan, like the main bad guy. So I bring this up because I think a major portion of the change we start to see in Jin, it's not just due to like his youth compared to his uncle's old way of thinking or anything like that. I think it's because he's actually in it. His uncle is a prisoner. He ain't out here seeing all the brutality and sickness of these Mongols, and honestly of the regular people on Tsushima taking advantage of the chaos. Jin sees this the whole time. So I really think the environment has a big part to play. And I want to say that because the relationship between him and his uncle once they reunite, I think it has like the most like gravitas in the narrative.
The Shogun formally supports my decision to adopt you. When our island is saved, you will be heir to Clan Shimura. Not as a ghost, but as a samurai.
I won't disappoint you, Uncle.
So again, I feel I need to emphasize, even though I sound like a broken record, like Jin Sakai at this point, he does not want to be this ghost. Like right now, he's just freed his uncle. He's ready to ride against the Mongols. He thinks he can be somewhat redeemed. And all this stuff he did, doing it Yuna's way and, betraying, I guess, the samurai honor. All of that goes away if he can, be honorable in victory along with his uncle and then, live as father and son. And it's so impactful because this relationship, which I think is the second most important relationship in the game, it's the one where like you legit feel as if you have lost something that was detrimental to your personality, something that you can't get back when, what ultimately happens. Okay, so the Mongols are hunting people for sport. They're hanging your people from trees. You ride past just massacres where the bodies burned or put on stakes. But, you still want to be this samurai along with your uncle. What ultimately convinces you that maybe being the ghost is the best way? Now, there are obviously, I guess, multiple factors, but I'm going to say that it points to the person I think is the number one most important character in this game.
He murdered Taka.
Yeah, man, this was like John Wick's dog, or like Brock from God of War. Like, you don't mess with Taka. Like, the man who literally went from being like probably just a straight up coward who just wanted to escape with his sister to being the bravest person in the game. Like, the man didn't even want to be there, but he was inspired by you, not even the ghost, like you in particular, Jin, to the point where he was doing things he couldn't even believe, helping you when no one else would, and dared to go against the Khan just to save your life. And I think that moment right there, more than anything else, that's the moment when you just realize, like, Jin, he is now different.
I need my sword. Kill them all.
You deserve death.
So there's this certain tone in his voice when he just said kill them all about the Mongols. And I don't think that tone changes until probably the end of the game. Like, again, the man has changed and he is not going to let up. He is now willing to do whatever it takes, which brings him in conflict with his uncle.
By teaching them to fear us. If you continue down this path, you will be no better than the Mongols. I trained you to fight with honor.
Honor died on the beach. The Khan deserves to suffer.
You are ruled by your emotion.
I sacrificed everything I knew to save our people. I gave them hope. You did nothing.
Y'all, I'm going through so many hours of gameplay in such a short amount of time. We're gonna wrap it up soon, but and this is something you should play through to really get the full scope, or even watch through if you can. So this guy Jin, it took so much more, and I hope I'm demonstrating it took so much more than most of us would be willing to put up with for him to ultimately just break, right? Best friends betraying you, seeing your people turn on each other, your uncle captured, just death and destruction everywhere you look, and this dude still is like, yo, I'm not this ghost, I can be this samurai, I can be redeemed. And the moment he breaks, the moment it happens, like he's different and you feel different, and it's just, you can see on his uncle's face, it's breaking his uncle's heart. And like I said, I understand it. I feel for him. Like, this Jin is changing into something else. But at the same time, man, like, he hasn't seen what Jin has seen, and he hasn't lost what Jin has lost, and that is what it takes to create this. And Jin has changed a lot. Like, it's been a true arc, and right now it's so personal for him, and it's so important for him that that dream he had of walking as father and son and finally, you know, having a family again, it's over. And it leads to probably the greatest line.
I am not your son. I am the ghost.
And you will be judged for it.
Yeah, the voice acting definitely has a lot to do with how I feel about this. But hey, hopefully these piecemeal cutscenes and this rush through, you know, Jin's stories sort of demonstrated what I've been trying to say about why I love this game so much, because the arc you go through and the people you meet along the way just really draw you into this whole world. Now, Jin being the ghost, you know, there's one more thing about that I want to talk about, and it's his impact on other people. Most notably, I'm going to bring up an ally named Norio, who is a monk. And your impact on him is really unforeseen, because you kind of drive him to be something that, you know, he wasn't and probably shouldn't be. And I really, again, Sucker Punch, I just appreciate that they added this, because, you know, it shows there are two sides to everything. You know, it's cool to be Batman until you realize the people Batman inspires, and it shows that, hey, you know, maybe Uncle wasn't all the way wrong like we thought he was, and maybe we weren't all the way right like we thought we were. So after you've accepted this moniker of the ghost willingly and are using it, Norio seems to be inspired in all the wrong ways. He goes from being like this, you know, peaceful defender to being a proactive avenger.
Responsible. When I find him, he will pray for a quick death, and his cries will go unheard.
You're Enjo's brother. I respect your right to seek revenge. I don't want you to become...
Like what? You?
Hey man, I remember when I heard that line hit me. Man really just said, yo, how you gonna try to tell me how to act when you're the same way? Yeah, so I get it. And you know, the context for this is, he is angry because he has discovered the person who basically killed his brother, and he wants revenge on that person. So he's kind of given up the whole peaceful monk thing at this point. The thing is, he takes, you know, inspiration from the ghost a little too far and kind of goes overboard.
You once told me you will never swing your naginata in hatred.
I did what the ghost would do. And now Harsho is gone. I'm not going back to Cedar Temple. Not after this.
I'll say it for the last time. Like, if you played the game, then you'll understand why this is a big deal. And if you haven't, you might not get like the total impact. But them just showing the consequences of you being the ghost is not something, you know, a lot of games would do. You know, they just show you being this total badass and all the benefits of it. I like that this game crafted this narrative showing your reluctance, what it took for you to get there, and the ultimate consequences once you accepted that you have to be this thing that you didn't want to be in the first place. You know, as the storytelling nerd on Small Couch, you know, I just really appreciated that, and it's something I needed to talk about. I wish I could do, you know, like a 3 or 4 hour video just going through the entire story so I could talk about everything, and you know, maybe we will. But hey guys, if you have played Ghost of Tsushima, let me know your favorite moment of this game right down there in the comments, and thank you guys for sticking with me this whole time. Until next time, I'm out.
I hope we can meet again. If not as father and son, then as warriors who have walked different paths. Whatever you believe I've become, I will always be your family.